Thank you all for coming out. Obviously, we have Commissioner Bettman with us today. He's had a busy day already. He has already met with Governor Bredesen, met with Mayor Dean, had lunch with the ownership group, met with some of our staff, as well as hosting his own radio show up in the XM studio and the like. So with that, I want to make him available to you folks for 15-20 minutes, and I'm going to turn it over to the Commissioner if there's anything you'd like to open with, and then throw it open for questions.
Well, I was going to open by telling you what I did all day, but we won't be doing that. I have no formal announcements to make. I didn't bring any tornadoes with me as I did when I was here a year ago, so hopefully no tornadoes tonight, and it's always good to be here, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Meetings with the mayor, governor, are they fairly standard meetings, or was there anything
they were
about their purpose?
No, just when I come into town, I like to touch base with the people who are important to the franchise and to whom the franchise is important. Good dialogue about the state of the world in Nashville, the state of the franchise. It was really more of an update and say hello while I was in town.
You updating them or them updating you?
I try to get a sense of how things are going here, state of the economy, which seems to be a hot topic for everybody everywhere. And I think everybody's feeling pretty good about the franchise these days.
Earlier this year, the ownership group here talked about the possibility of having to buy up tickets in order to reach the revenue sharing number, the 14,000 mark. Is that, in your mind, is that an acceptable way to reach it if necessary?
That doesn't work. You just can't buy up your own tickets. Tickets have to be sold in the ordinary course as they're available to the public. Doesn't mean the businesses can't buy them up, although based on the information I got today and based on how the attendance has been, particularly I think for the last 9 games, they have every expectation that they're going to meet the threshold on their own without any problem.
To clarify,
assuming that everybody continues to go to the game, which is very important.
To clarify, though, the ownership group could not buy up tickets to reach that threshold.
Well, the only way anybody can buy up tickets is in the ordinary course and at dollar amounts that it's available to the general public. What you can't do is say I'm buying a bunch of tickets for $5 each and use that to increase your numbers. No, you can't circumvent the revenue sharing rules that way. And that won't come as a surprise to anybody. All of our clubs know that as well. It's really, I know the article that everybody's referring to, but it's really a non-issue.
When you guys,
but I can't do this in stereo, guys.
Do you see concrete signs where the locally based ownership group has made any kind of profound difference here yet, or?
Yeah, I definitely see the franchises heading in the right direction. I think it's been on a solid footing. We could have done without the hiccup, and you know what the hiccup is, although I can be more specific if you want me to be. They could have done without that, the franchise, they meaning the ownership group. But based on the lunch I had today, everybody's committed to Nashville, to this franchise, and we think long-term it's going to work. I think if there was an expectation that just because the franchise changed hands to a local group that things were going to change overnight, I think that's unrealistic. Running a franchise is hard work. Being a part of the community is something that continues to evolve over time. I think they're doing a good job at it, and I think the franchise is heading in the right direction. David was on my radio show today, both Davids were, and Barry, but indicated that the franchise is going to break even this year, and in this environment and with all the work they've done, I think that's a very telling statistic in terms of people not having to worry about the franchise. I know that there is a lot of media speculation from other places about the future of this franchise, and I think that speculation is nothing more than speculation and completely unfounded based on everything that I observe over time and that I observed here today.
A lot of folks are still interested in Alexander Radloff's situation here.
So am I.
Yeah, I know the NHL has been pushing for kind of a neutral site arbitration at some point, and that just seems to have kind of gone off the map.
The KHL wouldn't, and the Russian Ice Hockey Federation wouldn't agree with it. I think our position has been very clear on this. Radullov's in breach of his contract. The KHL has acknowledged to me that they know he had a valid contract, and frankly, the way they've conducted themselves in this whole matter is unacceptable, which is why we don't have a transfer agreement with them, and which is why we're not moving forward on any cooperative ventures. Until there's a demonstrated respect for contracts, there's nothing for us to talk about. And if this situation means that we're not cooperating with the KHL or the Russian Ice Hockey Federation, so be it. That's the bed they made.
Is Alexander Radulov welcome back in the NHL at some point?
Well, that is not, in the first instance, our issue. He owes the Predators a year under his contract. And so if he wants to play in the NHL, he's going to have to deal with the Nashville Predators.
Do you see any signs that possibility that he might return after the season?
That's a conversation you have to have with David Poyle. The specifics of the who and when and where and if is really between him and the club ultimately. I can only tell you what my view of it is from a league perspective and how the league has responded to it. You know, it's no secret we haven't had a transfer agreement, and while we're engaged in discussions with the IIHF to get a transfer agreement, it wouldn't be a transfer agreement that involves the Russians. We're talking with the IIHF about the other federations.
Chris?
Okay, franchise stability has been something that's been real important to you. You see with the efforts of Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and these others. How do you view, just coming out of the lockout, the fact that, you know, close to 7 teams have either changed ownerships or have had, you know, certain financial issues coming out when, through the process of the lockout, you guys kind of got the financial structure you wanted for the league? Is that just part of the process?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, is it 7?
Well, I think 5 teams have changed owners since the lockout, and then
it's not registering to me.
St. Louis, Nashville, Edmonton,
Tampa,
and then, Minnesota with the
well,
up
okay.
here. So.
I think in most of those cases, there were reasons. In Tampa and Minnesota, Bob Nagley and Bill Davidson, respectively, were at the point in their lives where they wanted to simplify things. In this case, you know, Craig Leopold felt that he had done as much as he could in Nashville and wanted to move on, and then decided he missed it. And in Edmonton, we had the original group of 37 that saved the franchise a decade ago, and based on the individual circumstances and the fact that a lot of that group was getting older, they decided it was time to consolidate the franchise in one person's hands. So if you look at each of them, without a broad brush, but you look at each specific, there was a good reason why each franchise sold, and had nothing to do with the lockout. It probably meant coming out of the work stoppage that the system was such that the franchises that people, for the reasons we discussed, wanted to sell were able to do it.
The salary cap has gone up annually
Yes.
since you put it in. Given the current state of economics worldwide, is there would it be prudent maybe at some point this offseason get with the Players Association, explore maybe freezing it or decreasing it at some point?
Well, the answer to that question has to take into account that the question suggests that the salary cap is this free-floating device. The salary cap is linked to revenues, and if revenues go up, as they have, the salary cap goes up, and the amount of money that the players get as a group goes up, and that's what you've seen for the last 3 years. This year, in real terms, real dollars, native dollars, our revenues will probably increase between 5 and 6%. We were projecting slightly over 7, and the fact that we're still growing at 5 to 6 is pretty good, but the softness you're seeing in the economy around the edge is probably the difference between 5 to 6 and 7. In terms of the cap dollars, the way we account to the players, that's done in US dollars, and the decline of the Canadian dollar means that for computational purposes, the revenues that we're accountable to the players for will probably only go up about 1%. Okay, the issue as to what happens with the cap will be a function as to whether or not the union decides to take the 5% bump. They took it last year. and salaries went up about 14%, which is why we're going to get back a big escrow. I don't know what they're going to do, but in terms of the way the mechanism works, it's working exactly how it was intended to.
This question's about the announcement of the Blues in Detroit
Yes.
opening the season next year. Going back a couple
You're
years.
leaving out Chicago and Florida.
Chicago and Florida also.
But that means you're demonstrating some sort of bias in your question.
Going back a couple years, what were the reasons that you wanted to go global to start the season?
Well, there are a couple of things that in our thought process that I need to share with you. One is, obviously, there is a tremendous amount of interest in our game outside of North America, particularly in Europe. 28% of our players come from there. And so we wanted to be in a position to respond to the expressions of interest and the interest that's in our game. And we can track, we see all the visits to NHL.com, for example, that come from outside of North America. And fans in those countries want to follow our game because the best hockey in the world is played here. And they want to see how their players, the players who they followed as youngsters and developing, are doing over here. So on the one hand, it's responding to the great level of interest that there is in hockey. We were in Prague and Stockholm last year, and those are very sophisticated, knowledgeable hockey markets and passionate fans. Point one. Point two, by responding to that interest, we do it not with exhibition games, but games that count in the standings, regular season games. We think that's important that they see the real product. And it continues to encourage interest in our game and the development of players. So all we're really doing is bringing the game back to places where it's important and where a lot of our players come from.
It's only the third year that you would do it, so maybe there's not a lot of evidence. But other than clicks on NHL.com, is there any other way to measure?
In terms of, we're on television in 100 and some odd countries. There's more and more interest from a sponsorship standpoint. Obviously, you can't, the games sell out. They sell out quickly. We know that there's real interest there, and it's very exciting for the fans to see the players come back. Taking Detroit, for example, to Stockholm, I think there are 7 Swedes, at least on the Detroit team. The players who go back to their homelands are very excited to go back with their teams to show off their homeland and their fans and their communities to their teammates. So it's really a two-way street. It's worked very well.
Has there been consideration towards having similar opening games at North American cities that don't have the NHL, like Winnipeg, Kansas City, Las Vegas?
Well, for the most part, if we're playing here, we're playing 94% of capacity this year. So it's not about filling our buildings, and there's plenty of hockey available here. It's easy for people to go to other markets that you can get all the television you want live with the Center Ice package through either satellite or cable. You can get Game Center and watch 4 games at once on NHL.com. You can go to the NHL Network. The situations are not comparable because what we're really trying to do is go to places that don't really have a chance to see hockey the way we do here in North America. Yes. I'll come back to you.
Sorry, John.
John's used to it. He can handle it. You okay, John?
I'm okay.
Couldn't say anything. I actually have 2 questions, but they're completely different. The first one is...
Do them one at a time because
Right.
at my advanced age, it's hard to remember one thing at a time.
We'll go with one at a time.
Good, thanks.
It seems like every once in a while there's a little bit of a flare-up of whether it's dangerous hits from behind or headshots, things like that. What can the league do, or what more can the league do, or what are the plans for trying to get that kind of thing out of the game? I mean, what can you do to eradicate those dangerous plays?
By the way, in a game that is as physical and as fast-paced as ours, things sometimes happen that you wish wouldn't. But hockey operations monitors every game as it's played. We look for trends. When we see trends we don't like, we try to make adjustments in terms of making sure the officials are keeping an eye on things. And as appropriate, we punish with supplemental discipline. Slashing was an issue a number of years ago. We started being more rigorous in the punishment, making clear it was a priority to get rid of the slash, and you see very little slashing on the hands and the like as you used to. Hits from behind, hits to the head, A year and a half ago, we issued an edict that said intentional shots to the head too late to an unsuspecting player, on and on and on. And we issued some pretty severe suspensions at the start of last season. And while you'll occasionally see a shot that you prefer not to see, not very often. And there are a lot of times you'll see plays where somebody, oh, that was a terrible, but it was a clean check. And so we constantly monitor and we make adjustments where we need to. And if you, on balance, look at what takes place in the game and look at what used to, I think we've done a pretty good job at policing the things that need to be policed. That doesn't mean that you get absolute complete compliance every night, but on balance, you see far fewer shots to the head than you used to. You see less slashing, you see less elbows to the head, less sticks to the head, and that's what we strive for. So we constantly monitor and we adjust when necessary, and we punish as appropriate. Now, you said you had a second question. I do remember that.
Yes, thank you. The other one is actually new media for the NHL,
Yes.
kind of moving towards the web. Obviously, the website look has changed. Just kind of looking ahead to the future here as far as being able to reach and engage more fans online, what is the league looking at doing? What direction should even at the team level
Well,
might be?
two things. Actually, what's the name of that magazine?
Fast Company.
Fast Company, which for you techies and the like, very important magazine. We were picked as one of the top 10 most innovative companies for NHL.com, and we were in sports, and we were the only sports league named. So this is a very important thing. Why? We have a lot of displaced fans. We have a lot of fans who want more content than they get from traditional media. No knock at what you guys do, but sometimes you don't cover us as much as our fans like, or with the newspaper industry being what it is. So it's all about content. Big emphasis for us this year on video, and Game Center Live being one example with all the applications you can use. We want to have as much unique, rich content so that if you're a fan and there's anything you could possibly want, you want to go see Ovechkin's amazing goal from last night, you can get it. You come home at 11:15. If you don't want to sit through Sports Center and see everything, but you want to know everything that happened that night in the NHL and see the highlights, you can do it on demand. What the clubs can do and what they're doing, and it was central to us getting all the club sites on a common platform, was we're taking care of the technology of the club sites, and the responsibility for the clubs now is to begin developing content of their own to incorporate on NHL.com. Not unlike what we're doing at the league level with the hockey show. I mean, an original show every day. And so it's all about content, and it's all about delivering content as real time as you possibly can. It's a priority for us. Yes.
Can you bring us up to date on the Boots Del Biagio situation, and if, in your opinion, the organization is getting close to finding new ownership for their shares?
Well, it's actually the trustee in bankruptcy who's looking. The interest is what the interest is. As David Freeman said on my radio show earlier today, it's not impacting the day-to-day operations of the club. It's probably an annoyance and a pain to deal with, but at the end of the day, the interest is what it was. It doesn't entitle anybody to control. And so if it's not resolved in the short term, it'll get resolved when the puts and calls are all due. The status of all that, I think there was a plea recently or something. I mean, but I'm not, it's yesterday's news. It's unfortunate that it happened. We wish it hadn't, but when these are crazy times when you see the amount of defrauding that's going on and the scale that people have been able to do it at in a variety of places. It doesn't excuse it. We wish it didn't happen, but it's for the owners, it's something they've had to deal with. For the fans and the club, it hasn't been an issue.
In your opinion, does this club have the right to approve any new ownership that comes forward, even if it's...
I'm not an expert on their documents and their partnership agreement without having looked at it recently. I think so, but the league has the right of approval as well, because any ownership interest has to be approved under the league's constitution and bylaws.
When you talk about franchise sales, the name of Jim Balsillie seems to come up all the time. In light of his recent
In some
sanctions-
places.
In light of his recent sanctions from the Ontario Security Commission and the SEC.
I haven't given
is
it
that
any,
for
I haven't given it any thought whatsoever. I don't focus on who may be an owner unless there's a reason to. And as of right now, there's no reason for us to be focusing on him.
A lot of discussion about fighting injuries since the unfortunate death last month. You have a lot of different answers ranging from getting rid of the instigator rule to the OHL getting rid of fighting altogether. What is the league's plan before next year?
Those are interesting positions on the spectrum. Getting rid of the instigator to encourage more fighting and getting rid of fighting altogether. I mean, those are two completely different directions. Based on discussions that I've had with all of our constituent groups, I don't foresee a point that fighting as part of the game would simply be eliminated. It's been a part of the game. It's not an important part of the game, but it does act, as you will, as a bit of a thermostat to the nonstop physical action that we see. I do think we will, and I've said this at the general managers meeting in March and the competition committee meeting in June, have a good, candid discussion about the role of fighting to make sure that everybody agrees that it is what it is, and make sure there is no sentiment to do anything radically different one way or the other. And I don't sense that there is, but I do believe we'll have a discussion on what I've been characterizing as the rules of engagement. How fights start, what happens if a helmet comes off, the role of the takedown. Are there things we need to be looking at, if any, to modify how fighting is done to perhaps make it a little safer? The Sanderson tragedy was exactly that, a terrible tragedy, although that was in a league that didn't permit fighting. And so, you know, we need to take a good hard look at exactly how we move forward.
Could you walk through just the factors that go into deciding where in Europe you want to play some of these opening season games, and then two, how you decide on which teams?
Well, first of all, it is based on places where we believe there's interest, based on facilities, based on particular markets, based on promoters and their interests, which tells you where the interest level lies. And then we try to be a little opportunistic on the teams that we select. When you're in the infancy of doing this, you need volunteers who you have to persuade that it's going to be a good experience and that it's okay. And then the more you do it, and the more the players and the clubs come back and say it was a good experience, as we had this year, then more clubs want to do it. My hope is over time everybody does it. Nashville went to Japan a number of years ago. St. Louis is going now. So we try and spread it around because there is a fair amount of travel involved. It's a little bit different. Some clubs, from a hockey operations standpoint, worry about all the travel. Other clubs think it's a big and good bonding experience for the team to start the season. But we've been attempting to move it around and include as many clubs as possible. We haven't forced anybody to go yet.
Doug Armstrong told me this morning that in Stockholm they're actually going to adjust the size of the rink to an NHL rink, and I can't remember.
I think they did that last year.
Did they? I couldn't remember if
I
they've
think
done
that's
that
my
before.
recollection, yeah.
Is that something that you guys like, or does it
No,
bother you if it's on an international?
Hey, listen, these are games that count. You look at the races in the West right now, somebody's going to make the playoffs by a point or two. Every game, including the first game of the season, matters. That's what's so special about these games and why the fans gravitate to them in Europe, because they're getting the real deal. So we want to play them as close to ideal conditions as possible.
A quick follow-up to that, you talked about some of the teams had more interest maybe than others. When I talked to John Davidson, he said he was really aggressive in this. Can you kind of talk about his aggressiveness in trying to get this for
Well, I wasn't the one who was dealing with him on a day-to-day basis, but John, who's not only passionate about the Blues, is passionate about all things hockey, I think sees this as a great opportunity for the Blues. Maybe some of the fans will want to come over. We see that a lot. Last year was when I was in Prague, I was at a restaurant, and a number of Rangers fans came over. They had made the trip over because it's a special opportunity. When we did the first games in London with the Ducks and the Kings, you can't believe how many people from Southern California had actually gone to London for the trip. So it's special, it's unique, It's an opportunity for the club's fans here to focus on something different. And I think from a hockey perspective, it's an opportunity to do something special with your players and have, as I mentioned before, a bonding experience to start the season. Yes, sir.
What about Sean Avery and his treatment that he's undergone? Is he going to be welcomed back into the league?
He's welcome back from a league standpoint. He served his suspension. He's under contract to the Dallas Stars, and ultimately it's up to them or whatever club might want him, because Dallas, I believe, has indicated that they don't, to make arrangements to have him. If he's now playing for the Hartford Wolfpack, for him to come back up, he's going to have to clear re-entry waivers, but that's a club decision. That's not a league decision. He's done from our standpoint what needed to be done.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Has the economy had an effect on the NHL?
I thought I had responded to that a little bit earlier, but I'll do that again so you can pick it up wherever you want to do that. We are going to have between 5 and 6% real growth this year, down a little bit from what we projected, so there's a tad of softness, but our season this year will likely be another season of record attendance and record revenues, with a little softness around the edge, namely not having quite as much growth as we projected. Going forward to next season, impossible to predict. The way the economy is, I have no doubt it will affect every industry and every business. For us, the first indicators will be what season ticket renewals look like and playoff ticket sales look like, and I think we'll get a better handle on those metrics in the next few weeks.
Got time for a couple more.
Just related to the outdoor game and the ratings on television.
Yes.
Is there anything that could be extrapolated or taken from the fact that, outside of, I think it was Detroit and Chicago, Buffalo and St. Louis were the top 4 U.S. markets that watched that game, the fact that really the bottom 5 were actually non-NHL cities?
Huh?
You had, like the way on the release that the league put out about the ratings, you had, there was Orlando and Indianapolis in the top 10 of in terms of cities that tuned in to watch that game, and I just...
I don't have the release in front of me, but I think what we traditionally do is give you a list of NHL markets, top performing NHL markets, and then top non-NHL markets.
I think this was all combined in one. I apologize for throwing out like a stumper there. I just
it's not a stumper. The fact is that something like 5 to 6 million people watched the game, which is the most that have watched the regular season game in 30 some odd years. So in terms, and that transcended the markets that were participating. This is a good event for us. It is the buzz of New Year's Day, and who would have thought 2 years ago that we, in terms of being the focal point of attention, could have supplanted college football on New Year's Day. This is an event that we will do again next year. I don't know where or who. We haven't had a chance to debrief yet. The event staff, we had 80 people work the event from the league, and then to reward them for such a good job in Chicago, we sent them to Montreal to do the All-Star game. So they're kind of decompressing, but in the next few weeks we'll start focusing on next year.
I guess just to, if you don't mind, follow up with that real quick. Just like when you're looking at TV ratings and things like that, or do you kind of keep an eye on maybe if there's certain markets that seem to, from a rating standpoint, hit certain levels that are not NHL city markets?
You mean in terms of the prospect of expansion or relocation?
Yeah, just
we're not looking at
not so much that. Just in terms of, are there the feel of the overall game? I mean, I was surprised to see one of the top 10 markets rated on that list that the league put out was like Orlando or some of these other.
That's a good thing. It means that the game is doing what we hoped it would, namely build scale, causing people who might not otherwise watch in places that might not otherwise be interested to be interested in the game. For a variety of reasons, the Winter Classic has captured imagination. The snow in Buffalo, the lure of 95-year-old Wrigley Field, you name it, but returning the game outdoors to its roots has a very special quality. And even if you're not a hockey fan, it makes you interested. Yes? Don't rush. We can finish up the questions.
No.
Oh, you want another one? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask what the league office can do to help the Preds score some goals.
Well, my suiting up wouldn't help. The, that's a question for David Boyle. Yes.
Does the NHL
So that's
have-
another reason, Radulov, 30 goals would have helped.
Does the NHL have any interest in maybe someday like an affiliated system like baseball has for its minor leagues? Obviously, the American League and the ECHL are very important, but do you ever see it reaching maybe 4 or 5 levels deep?
Well, our players develop a little bit differently. The AHL is important, and most of our teams have AHL affiliates, but we have players who come from the CHL, the Canadian Hockey League, Major Junior. We have players that come from U.S. colleges. We have players that come from Europe, and as they develop, by coming through those traditional routes, they either stop in the AHL or they come right up. I'm not sure that it's fair or appropriate to try and equate what one league does or another. The NFL and the NBA don't have any of that because the colleges take care of it for them, or the high schools in some cases. But so it's from our standpoint, there's no shortage of talent. In fact, if you look around the league, we've probably got more young, talented kids, highly skilled, than we've ever had at one point in our game. So development hasn't been much of an issue.
From a marketing perspective, do you think you see single and double A teams, say like the Cubs, for instance, in Peoria, their single A teams are suddenly everybody's a Cubs fan, whereas 10 years ago they were all Cardinal fans, depending on what minor league teams in town. Do you think that might help grow the game as well at that level?
Well, perhaps, but it's more important that our 30 clubs, which are getting the talent, have it. I mean, it's all over the lot. I mean, there's no right answer to that.
Okay.
Anybody else? Thank you,
Thank
and
you
enjoy
all.
the